for your patience. I'd like to call the Labor, Commerce, Research, and Economic Development Committee to order. I'm Senator Amy Volk from District 30, which covers most of Scarborough, all of Gorham, and most of Buxton. Welcome.
Oh, good afternoon. Erin Herbig. I represent District 97, Belfast, Northport, and Waldo.
Good afternoon, I'm Jim Campbell. I represent District 21, Alfred, Chapley, Limerick, Newfield, and Parsonsfield.
Good afternoon, I'm Joel Stekis. I represent District 105, which are the towns of Canaan, Palmyra, St. Albans, Hartland, Ripley, and Cambridge.
Hi there, I'm Dylan Gates. I represent District 35, which is Westbrook.
Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Paul Gilbert. I represent House District 74, which is Jay, Livermore Falls, and part of Livermore.
Good afternoon, welcome everybody. I'm State Senator John Patrick from Rumford. I represent Senate District 18, which is comprised of 29 towns in western and northern Oxford County, the town of Livermore, Livermore Falls, and Androscoggin counties.
Good afternoon, I'm Ryan Bechter, I represent District 11, which is part of Biddeford.
Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Lawrence Lockman from Amherst. I represent House District 137, which is 15 towns and several townships in 3 counties. It stretches from the Penobscot Valley all the way to the Hancock and Washington County highways.
Representative Mastracchio.
Good afternoon, I'm Anne Marie Mastracchio. I represent House District 18, which is part of the City of Sanford.
Thank you very much. And I wonder if Representative Stekis would like to share some happy news that he had yesterday.
I have photos.
Oh, wow. Put your make on. The entire state of Maine and our vast listening audience is interested in knowing what happened yesterday.
My first little grandchild, Jack Stekis, was quite the miracle.
Congratulations.
Yes. Thank you.
Very exciting. And we'll be happy to share the photos up and down if you like. So I also want to introduce our legal analyst, Henry Fouts, is with us today, as well as our clerk, Diane Stewart. And just a reminder to shut off your electronic devices. It's a $5 fine for interrupting a public meeting. And I wonder if Representative Lockman ever paid his fine.
I paid it this morning.
Okay,
And
very good.
Very careful today.
That was good. And a reminder that there's no eating or drinking except for water by members of the public. Please, we'd like to keep our committee room clean. And just as a reminder, we may be getting up and coming and going when we have other business to attend to or other issues going on. Please don't take that as any indication of a lack of concern for the issues. So the order of business today is going to be quite jumbled up. We are going to start with LD 403, an act to eliminate the exception from minimum wage laws for workers who receive tips. And then we'll be taking LD 673, an act to help prevent age discrimination. LD 530, an act to improve public sector collective bargaining laws. Followed by LD 612, an act to require a large employer to provide a paper pay stub upon request from an employee. After that, we will take all of our minimum wage bills as one slate, essentially, the way that we did it as a public hearing. So, with that, I'd like to open the work session on LD 403, which is an act to eliminate the exception from minimum wage laws for workers who receive tips. Turn it over to Mr. Fouts. Diane is giving us all of our information.
Analysis coming around. LD 403. This bill eliminates the tip credit provision of Maine's minimum wage law that allows an employer to offset up to 50% of the minimum wage, which would currently be $3.75, paid to a service employee who receives tips, provided that the employee receives at least the minimum hourly wage when direct wages and tips are combined. There's a summary of some of the public testimony. There's an information request to the LCIO there. I've included some statutory provisions just for background information. A service employee is any employee engaged in an occupation in which the employee customarily and regularly receives more than $30 a month in tips. There's a tip credit provision there on page 5, and the bill would basically just eliminate that first paragraph there. There are a couple of technical issues. You may want to expressly prohibit a tip credit because it's currently allowable under federal law. So just omitting the reference could cause some confusion. There are a couple other places in statute where you would probably want to make that clear as well. And tip pooling and service charges from subsections. We have a preliminary fiscal impact statement. Minor impact. Fiscal impact of this legislation on the Bureau of Labor Standards within the Department of Labor expected to be minor and can be absorbed within the existing budget resources.
And I'd like to recognize Representative Herbert.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Henry, for that. As you can see by our schedule for the day, we have quite a few bills that pertain to minimum wage laws that we're considering right now. I would say I would like to make a motion ought not to pass on LD 403, just because after looking at this, after looking at some of the technical concerns, I feel pretty confident that this is not the avenue we should be going down.
I'll second the motion.
Seconded by Representative Campbell. All those in favor? Oh, sorry. Any discussion? Senator Patrick, I'm all mixed up today. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would say that I agree with the Good House Chair, Representative Herbig. I actually probably asked around 40 tipped employees what they felt about the issue. I do admit that probably 32, I think, were in urban areas, and 8 were in the rural areas, and especially the urban areas, as statistics bear out, they do make pretty decent wages. I probably didn't get the exact wages from each one, but it was more significant than I would have thought. And the ones in the rural areas, which Representative Gilbert and I did have some anxiety, there still may be a few people out there in the real tiny mom and pop restaurants, but they do get the minimum wage that is prevalent right now. So that being the factor, I'm going to go along with the motion on that.
Thank you, Senator. Any other discussion? Are we ready for a vote? Okay. All those in favor of the motion ought not to pass? It appears to be unanimous of those present. Thank you. Okay. So we will move on to what's the next one? 673. Work session on LD 673, an act to help prevent age discrimination.
LD 673. This bill prohibits an employer or an agent of an employer from including on a job application form a question that asks for the year of an applicant's high school graduation. The Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Standards shall enforce this law with a fine of up to $500 per violation. There's a summary testimony from the attorney. There's an information request to find out from the Maine Human Rights Commission if there's potential gray area with this age discrimination, and whether the language in this bill or some amended version will clear this up. We actually have the executive director of the Maine Human Rights Commission here. I don't know if the committee wants to hear from her on this.
Yes, please. Thank you. Hello.
Good afternoon. Thank you for taking this out of order. My name is Amy Sneerson. I'm the Executive Director of the Maine Human Rights Commission, and I understood there were some questions about how this provision might interact with the Maine Human Rights Act with respect to age discrimination. The Maine Human Rights Act already prohibits age discrimination and specifically says that it is unlawful discrimination in employment for an employer to use any form of application for employment or personnel containing questions or entries directly or indirectly related to a series of protected classes, including age. So questions about age by themselves, including date of birth, violate the Maine Human Rights Act. Courts have interpreted that to say that many of the types of inquiries that are routinely on applications, like education, did you go to college, graduate degrees, many of them do not per se violate the Maine Human Rights Act or federal anti-discrimination laws because they don't always require a date. The one that has been sort of continually a problem for employers is when the sort of past history includes high school graduation, because you could go to college at any age, but generally asking for high school graduation date pinpoints a person's age, and it's hard to get around that. Our commission does routinely get complaints. Employment is the largest area of discrimination that we handle. We get every year between 650 and 800 complaints a year of discrimination. 75% of those relate to employment. I didn't have time, since hearing that you wanted to have information about this, to identify how many relate to age. But I can tell you that we routinely do get complaints about employer application forms that violate prohibitions about asking for dates of birth and dates of high school graduation. So that's a sort of a backdrop of what the Maine Human Rights Commission, our experience with age discrimination and application forms. I don't know if that helps you in any way.
Representative Mastracchio.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When you're talking about an application form, in the instance that was brought forth to us for this, in this particular bill, where it was an online request. And it just seems to me that it might be harder to oversee and watch out for, that anybody could put up an application. But the applications that you're talking about, most often, I mean, for some groups, they are pretty much vetted and they kind of try to get those questions off. So when they come to you, it's been somebody who probably doesn't maybe know or realize that that is something they shouldn't do. But do you have any experience with how many of online complaints for online job applications, and so many more of those are being done now rather than the paper?
We have not looked at the question of whether an employer uses a paper form or an online application. I think to us, the more significant categorization is it a big employer with sophisticated human resources personnel and attorneys, or is it a small employer that is cobbling together a form from whatever resources they might find, and they're not really aware of what the laws are. I don't know if I answered your question.
Follow up, and then Representative Campbell.
I mean, you answered that one. I just am curious, I mean, because what we're wrestling is the law that we have now, is that sufficient? I mean, to protect someone, or do we need to specifically say, you can't put that, so that then people will know that they can't? And will that make it any more, will we know that then they'll know that? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, ignorance is not an excuse for breaking the law.
That is what we say to folks all the time. And I don't think this will hurt in the attempt to get folks to comply with the law. If it will help, I'm not sure, because my guess is the same folks who don't know that it's against the Maine Human Rights Act might not know what all the specific provisions in labor laws are already. And I want to be clear, this is not, the statute that this is proposed to go in is not a statute that my agency enforces. So it's sort of ancillary to what we do.
Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I told Representative LaJure the other day, I am the official oldest person in this legislature. And I probably don't, I'm so old I don't remember when I graduated or where I graduated from.
I'm sure you don't.
Representative Gilbert, and then Representative Steckes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you are receiving complaints about the question, what year did you graduate from high school? And what's the result of those complaints?
That's a great question. So if we do find a violation, and we do routinely, our commission finds cause to believe that discrimination occurred from an unlawful inquiry relating to high school graduation. what could happen is that our commission makes a finding of reasonable grounds under our statute, and the employer is branded as a discriminator in the public, in the newspaper. What happens legally is that once our commission has found reasonable grounds to think that discrimination has occurred, we are required to go through a sort of a mediation process where we try to work it out with the person who brought the complaint and the employer, and now our commission, because after we find reasonable grounds to believe that discrimination happened, we have standing to bring a lawsuit. So what we try to do is to get the employer to change their forms and to get up to date on what the laws are. But at that point, the complainant has a right to bring a lawsuit, the commission has a right to bring a lawsuit, and the employer, which oftentimes didn't mean to discriminate, is just trying to figure out how to make the whole thing right. So it could proceed to a lawsuit at that point. It could proceed to the commission bringing a lawsuit.
Representative Setkis, do you still have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The representative basically just asked the question that I was going to ask, but I had a follow-up to that. The high school diploma or graduation date is one thing. What would we be looking at for a list of similar items to try to cover all bases?
That is also a great question, and I meant, if I had been more organized, I would have brought, we have on our website a pre-employment inquiry guide, which tells employers specifically what they can and cannot ask. So there are all kinds of things that they should never, ever ask and do.
Representative Setkis?
So you haven't said that. It sounds like to me that we've already got these bases covered with what's existing.
I think the Maine Human Rights Act is pretty clear, and as is our agency's interpretation of what it requires.
And can you provide enough information that they should be able to come up with and do the right thing? Sounds like.
That is how we interpret it.
Thank you.
Senator Patrick?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess one of the things that I always wrestle with being a state senator is we hear a lot of bills that are well-meaning that may or may not add to what's already sufficient. But part of what I'm hearing is I actually think that now that we have this pre-employment inquiry guide that every employer is supposed to have, the other question that I have is, does people who are job seekers, do they actually know what companies aren't supposed to do? And that's kind of part of the problem, is in deciding whether we should add this little bit that may or may not help or not. It boils down to notification, publicity, and all that stuff, because being in the age group in Maine, one of the older age groups, I'm hearing it more and more, and, well, did I or did I not get discriminated against? Well, I always say, when in doubt, call the Maine Human Rights Commission, but it's kind of like some of the comp laws in the little folders that you give people. It'll tell you just enough to enlighten you, but doesn't tell you enough to really get you to that step where you know the right thing to do. So I guess I'm just, what type of publicity does the Human Rights Commission do on like a yearly basis for employees and employers would be my question.
That's another great question, and unfortunately the answer is very little, because we are a tiny agency with just under $1 million budget, and we have 600 to 800 cases a year to investigate. We don't have someone to do publicity. We take advantage, we try to leverage speaking at seminars, we have available on our website, we write articles and newsletters, but really we're overextended as it is. So if you guys can persuade Judiciary Appropriations to give us some money and publicity, that would be fantastic.
Thank you.
And by the way, in Maine, the age discrimination covers all ages, not just over 40.
Any other questions for Ms. Searson? Is it?
Seriously. Thank you.
Any other discussion or questions on this? We're going to take a couple of minutes break. Let's return at 4:45.
I want to shake hands with the oldest guy in Maine legislature. No. Yeah.
Anybody want to join me in the ladies' room? We'll be right back.
Per year for
I showed you the turbo scan. She's hard to do to myself. Sure, what? Yep. Especially if I'm the head guy. Yeah. I guess backpack. So you probably seen it was a yeah.
Different increases. So I just took the consumer price index and brought it to today's dollars, different. So what we're doing is consumer price index is bringing it forward. Yeah. Well, down is deflation. Yeah, I mean, there's usually not deflation, generally, but certain things, so 20 years ago, there's certain things were more expensive than they are now. Deflation is actually a bad thing. Stop spending. Because it creates an incentive to hold out and not spend now. Because if I wait years, it's going to be cheaper. But then the economy very because the waiting is going to get lower. So you don't want that. You're actually doing yeah. Well, I did have a presentation to the economic forecast yesterday. We do it 3 times a year. So, we did an job outlook on work week 2022. That was published in November, I think. We do that every 2 years. Another one next year. It's something we do. Actually, our funding is almost entirely federal, and the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics provides us the money for like unemployment rate, payroll jobs, and all the data we collect. But then the employment training provides we use that as like the outreach. Yeah. Keeps us busy. The WBQI? I haven't been involved in production or anything. I got my own stuff going on, but I'm aware of it. It's an important initiative. And as we get more users out, more data, more schools involved, it will be a better data set, more valuable. That's what you want. Parents and kids to be able to make good decisions. Spending a ton of money, borrowing a lot of money to go to school. You want to have it pay off. It's a difference in outcomes. Classical Greek history. Yeah. I think the world is changing, and it used to be more, just career. So you can spread all this talk about skills. There's a high more expectation that you actually know the stuff. Come on, it's it's out of our control. We just go with it as it is. How long have you been with the committee? 2 years. Yeah. Like it? Take a fair amount of time off this summer? Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah. Well, you can also take days off. Well, this time of year to have time off. Yeah, no kidding.
It is.
I need to go check, should I say that?
Look at how many people take knocks on this committee. Until I get home. Then I get home. I wear my bread and butter, I'll tell you that. So do you. As long as you learn the words yes, dear, you're all set.
How's David doing?
David is doing, that is doing well.
Where you living these days?
He's in Savannah, but he's working, TD Bank now, corporate headquarters, and they're working on some big change. And he's been working 7 days a week.
Wow. In Portland or Lewiston?
Down,
Falmouth.
yeah. And that's a lot of work, but, you know, he's 43, you know, you're right for a house.
That's actually, he was 43. I remember him as, you know, I think of him as a boy, you know?
I still do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
but he likes his work.
how many kids does he have now? 3? Yeah.
16, 13.
Get the whole family down here to the event?
2 girls.
Oh, my goodness. Time goes by. I think when he was with us, on his first one, I'm not sure if he had the second one before. I knew at one point I didn't count if he had 3.
But he was living in, when the 2 girls were born, he was living in Los How are you doing?
Good? Safe along.
I'll tell him to ask about it.
Yeah.
Well, here's something, the whole family's coming over to
Yeah.
We're almost on time. So, okay, we're back. And is there any more discussion, or does the committee have any more questions for anybody? Representative Mastracchio?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do you think we could bring the Department of Labor up and ask them
Certainly.
any questions?
Yes. Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
I'm Julie Rigonowitz with
Yeah.
Never thought you'd get to see us so much, huh?
I know.
Question, yes, go ahead.
Well, we heard from the Maine Human Rights Commission, and I think that was really interesting, but what my question is, what are you doing and what could you be doing differently that might help employers so that we're not putting potential employees in the position of being whistleblowers? Because if the goal really is to get people employed, it would seem to me you're putting the employee in a difficult position, because if they report someone, they're looking for a job, they want to work, but the word gets around that they made this complaint and somebody else might not be wanting to hire them. So I guess the questions are around what do you do to help employers know that this is unlawful, it's an unlawful inquiry, and help them make sure that, because what we found was there was at least one case that we looked at that was a big company, and the Maine Human Rights Commission was acting on it this year. I mean, that to me is inconceivable, and that maybe this is a little more pernicious. It's in there, and people are just doing it until they get caught.
Thanks. I would say that employers violate a range of labor laws and not just the discrimination ones. So we're constantly working at the department to educate both the employers and the employees on what is lawful and what is not. The discriminatory laws are not technically under the jurisdiction of the department. However, we do a couple things to educate employers, and we want employers to know all the resources that are available at the state level to help them. So one of the things that Commissioner Paquette has done since she became commissioner was do an employer services guide where we specifically list all the employment services and the consultative services that we provide, because unfortunately at the department I think that there's a negative perception that if you do call us as an employer and ask advice, we are going to open an active investigation on you in a more predatory way as opposed to a more consultative way. And we are working hard to dispel that. So the Employer Services Guide provides a range of information, and it includes the Maine Human Rights Commission amongst the agencies on the back page that employers can go for resources. We also started an employer newsletter. We send that to more than 10,000 employers, as well as more than 100 trade associations and all the chambers of commerce in the state. And we have included a note on in the links to online, so it's an e-newsletter, and you can click the link and go right to the guide that the Maine Human Rights Commission has put out. And we also put it out on social media, and I've actually put it on Twitter and Facebook with a link to the Maine Human Rights Commission. So even though we at the Department of Labor are not the enforcement agency, we are the gateway, and we recognize that when a worker calls and they don't know what to do for whatever their situation is, some of it may be U.S. DOL wage an hour, some of it may be Maine Human Rights Commission, some of it may be U.S., the EEO office at the federal level.